He
All
said,
right.
he said, I have a buttered roll for you, which I
We're
did not.
live, everybody.
Okay, we
That
got
happened
it.
fast.
All right, so Chris got us.
Hey, thank you.
As you can see, social distancing even in the shop. So yeah, hi, I'm Jamie. This is Shelly Bond, one of the most amazing editors in the world.
Oh my God, no, you'll make me blush.
Well, you kind of shaped my growing up. Like, read
Wow.
about everything. For those of us who don't know, what does an editor do?
Well, how much time do you have? Because an editor's job is never done. And a comic book editor's job is what I used to say is the greatest job that no one knows about. Because I started in 1988 and there were so few female comic book editors at that time. I just couldn't believe my luck. And as I sort of got to know the ins and outs of the job, I realized that it's so many things. You wear so many hats. You're part copywriter, part grammar smith, part syntax pedant, part art director, part psychologist, making sure you get the best work out of people really is an art and a science. So that's a big part of the job, communicating. Deadline crusher. And generally, though, in one word, it's being bossy and getting the job done.
But that's awesome. Like, I know I got lucky enough to do a Black Crown signing with you a couple years ago at New York City Comic Con. I think it was for Femme Magnifique.
And, oh, cool.
Yeah, I got to tell you then, I was like, you're what I want to be someday.
Well, I'm so happy to hear that because I think sometimes editing has become a lost art. I think sadly we're at a stage in the comics industry, not unlike politics, where through the late 80s and 90s and the early 2000s, it was such a invigorating workplace for women in comics. I mean, so many really important women were in charge. You had people like Jeanette Kahn at DC Comics, president publisher, and my boss at the time, Karen Berger, who really was the trailblazer for creator-owned comics. But just like with politics, which we don't have to go back to many times, but it's strange how it's analogous. Over the past 5 to 8 years, there's been quite a change where a lot of really strong women who know their stuff have suddenly been pushed to the side or eliminated from their positions. And it's quite sad because if you look around in comics, there's still a handful, thank God, of people like Sarah Gatos and other people who have, substantial editor-in-chief positions. But sadly, most of the women in comics are assistant editors or editorial assistants and don't often get the chance to rise up through the ranks to become, senior editors or editor-in-chiefs. And I think it's a sad thing. And I think that the craft in itself isn't taught anymore. So hearing you say that you want to be a comic book editor and you still feel like that's a cool profession, that's really, gratifying to me because I am determined to keep the art of editing alive and well, and especially look out for the next generation of young women, to make sure that they know it's an occupation and it's something that is an honor to be able to do in the pop culture world.
Yeah, and just touching for a moment again, your story career through Vertigo, but I want to touch specifically like an editor's role in a book like Fables, where you've got a creator that obviously has an idea that that's what they did. I mean, Willingham did 1 through 150, right?
Oh yeah, that I think Fables was the longest running creator-owned series for a major publisher. Now I know Cerebus lapped us a couple of times, but I remember when we got to 150, it was such an achievement. And let me just tell you, Bill had a story and then some, like right from the get-go. I worked with him many years before that at Kamiko, and from the first time I read his work, I thought he was a genius. So I knew when I got to Vertigo, I was going to track him down again. When he pitched me Fables, I knew on the phone from the first sentence when he told me about it that I wanted to work on it. And yeah, it was such a joy. 15 years of just nonstop, incredible storytelling from both Bill and, of course, Mark Buckingham and Steve Lealoha, and so many regular contributors, Todd Klein, Lee Lowridge. Uh, Definitely a career highlight.
No, and it's an amazing book. It's one that people still love. In fact, I just got in a special order today of the hardcovers of 9 and 11 that somebody had asked for.
Nice. They're beautiful with the Daniel Dos Santos covers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gorgeous books. And of course the spin-offs like Jack of All Trades and I can't remember the other one that was based on the
Fairest.
Thank you. And that one was gorgeous. Another thing that you did at Vertigo, I believe you were the executive editor through 2013 to 16. And did you help with Gerard Way starting Young Animals?
I did. Yeah, that was incredible. I had been in touch with Gerard for many years. I'm not sure if you know Gerard's backstory, but he was an intern at DC Comics.
I knew a little bit. I know he'd worked with Grant Morrison some, so that's about what I knew.
Well, even before the time that Grant and Gerard worked together, there was Gerard Way, the School of Visual Arts intern, who used to roam the hallways. And he was a fan of Grant's work, and I was editing The Invisibles. And I vaguely remember him, like maybe walked by him at the copy machine. He was a kid, and I was, of course, at that time, just a Vertigo editor doing my thing, not really, I didn't really interact with interns, so I didn't really know him at all.
Yeah.
But he actually came into the office years later and told me how much he liked all the books I edited. And we just started a great dialogue. And he said he was writing comics and that he wanted to work with me one day. So of course he ran off and started a band, so, there was that. But then we stayed in touch and he pitched me a couple of things. And unfortunately we never got them to any stage of solid development. But in 2015, he pitched this idea for his own creator-owned imprint. And I was lucky enough to sort of show him the ropes on how to curate and edit your own line of comics. So yeah, it was an amazing experience. He is not only one of the finest comic book writers that we have right now, but he's probably the nicest guy in comics. He is so gracious, and he doesn't have to be, because A, he's a rock star, and B, he's a comic book rock star. But he is no pretense, and working with him is honestly one of the greatest experiences I've had in comics. I think he's tremendously talented and just amazingly kind.
I got to meet him for 2 seconds at an Umbrella Academy panel in New York, and he was so kind. You're right. I mean, just to fans, I watched him sign all these books for so many fans, and you could tell that they were just absolutely in love with him. And it was really nice to see a creator just be happy about that.
And they're not all like that.
No, and
I'm sure you know.
Yes, very much so.
I always laugh because when you asked me in the beginning of this interview, what does an editor do? I could talk to you for 2 days about that. I mean, sometimes an editor's job is to make their talent look as great as possible. And sometimes that means faking what you don't do really well. And that goes for me as the editor, but also the talent. And I've definitely worked with people over the years who are not social people. They're their best when they're at their drawing table. And if they have to go out in public, sometimes they don't know what to say, and maybe they come across as mean or irritated when actually they might just be shy. And there are some people that are just jerks, but we somehow help them act not so jerky in public. But Gerard is the real deal.
He's genuinely kind like I said, just the small amount I had to him.
Yeah.
Now, since 2017, you've been working with IDW doing Black Crown, and that's your imprint, correct?
It was.
It was,
yes.
Okay.
Yes. We had the best time in comics working on Black Crown from 2016 to 2000. Well, actually, let me take that back. I pitched the line in 2016 in the fall to Chris Ryle, who just loved it right from the get-go. and I was hired a few months later to
Mhm.
launch the line for IDW. So it technically launched in 2017. We had 10 series, and sadly, we shuttered in November of last year, 2019. But it was the greatest experience I've ever had in comics, because basically my husband Philip and I
Mhm.
were sort of a two-person crew,
Yeah.
and we did everything from, I did the editing,
Mhm.
hired the talent, of course, and did all the regular editorial jobs. But Philip did all of the creative direction, did all the art and design, and we assembled the books. By the end, I was lettering as well, because to cut costs. I mean,
Yet another unsung hero of the comic book is the letterer.
oh my God, absolutely. I highly recommend to every editor just to learn the basics of lettering, because it makes you even more maniacal about your editing. And it's any time you take a moment to learn a different job of somebody on your team, you become better at your own job, because you put yourself in that other person's shoes. So um, I've always been accused of being a frustrated art director as an editor. All of my colleagues will definitely tell you that that's the truth. I come from a film background, so unlike a lot of comic book editors who have an English degree,
Mhm.
I did not bring one of those with me. And I've been learning from our wonderful proofreader, Arlene Lowe, who was DC Comics proofreader for 35 years. She was my proofreader at Black Crown, and she is my secret weapon on every project I have, because she is so smart and so picky. And I've learned more from her, I think, about grammar and syntax and the rules of comic book style than anyone. So uh, that learning to letter was not only important to me because I wanted to understand sort of what actually goes into placing the actual copy. As an editor, we would do balloon placements, of course. So we would review pencils and position where the ballooning is going to go on the page. But to physically take a pen and actually start doing some hand lettering, or doing it on the computer, which is what I mostly do, um, I not only get tremendous joy, but we save some money,
Yeah.
because obviously we weren't paying a letterer for the books. And that was the real problem with Black Crown. We had a lot of creative success. I think we got great reviews and a couple of nominations for the Eisners and the Ringo Awards. But sadly, our books, they cost a lot to produce, because we had certain standards. We sort of considered ourselves to be like the indie record label for IDW.
Well, it was like it
Oh,
really
thanks.
was. I mean, I think one of my favorites was Euthonauts with Teeny Howard.
Oh, thanks.
So
Yeah,
cool.
thank you. That was a joy to work on. And Nick Robles is like a superstar. I think he's already been snatched up by DC, and I'm not surprised. I mean, he was such a natural. He was recommended to me by Tess Fowler, and she actually had him do her very last cover of Kid Lobotomy. She was
Mhm.
running behind, and she said, "Hey, why don't you give Nick Robles a chance to do a cover?" And I didn't know his work, and I took one look at his work. I'm like, let's do it. And he impressed me so much that when we were looking for an artist for Euthonauts, he just seemed like a perfect fit for Teeny Howard. And they were another just stellar team that I think really evolved through those issues, the 5 issues, like by leaps and bounds.
Teeny's fabulous, just right off the bat.
Oh, and Teeny, I think, is one of the greatest comic book writers working today.
Oh yeah.
I'm so proud of like the work she's done, and what she did for Black Crown was seminal. Both Assassinistas and Euthonauts
Yeah.
just blew my mind, and I'm just incredibly proud of like all the work she's doing at Marvel, and just like what a kick-ass person she is also.
Right. I absolutely love her. So to talk about some of the work you've been doing now, so you've done a couple Kickstarters, like Femme Magnifique, and I believe your most recent one was Hey Amateur.
It was, and you backed it, so thank you.
You're welcome. Well, I love it. Like it's really neat. For the people who don't know, it's a collection of one-page how-tos. Like, so, give me what was your favorite in the book?
I'm not allowed to play favorites, but you know what? I cannot help myself. But there were so many. Wow. I was gonna look behind me because usually I have a copy of it nearby, and I'm gonna, off the top of my head, I'm gonna say, Gilbert Hernandez never ceases to amaze me. He did How to Make a Burrito Right, and it was a black and white story. Gilbert's black and white is part of the reason why I'm in comics. I read Love and Rockets when I was in college, and I couldn't write and I couldn't draw, but I knew I wanted to be a part of the comic scene. And so I thought, I don't know, what is it? I was a tape and film editor in school. So I'm like, well, maybe it's similar on paper. So I have him to thank for showing me that comics didn't have to be superheroes. Like I never really was into superheroes or even like mainstream, like Archie comics. I might have read a couple as a kid, but it was Love and Rockets. It was college where I really started to say, hey, what is this? This isn't what I thought a comic book was. And so I'm going to have to say Gilbert's was a favorite. God, I have so many. I'll start and stop there. What was your favorite?
I really enjoyed the dyslexia piece that
Megan Hutchinson.
Besides, I love Megan anyway. She's one of the greatest people in the world.
She is, absolutely. She actually helped me with Femme Magnifique. She was sort of my wing person. She helped me just in troubleshooting, coordinating, a little bit of design. And she's also a tremendous artist.
Right. I've got some of her stuff hanging up here just because I like it.
Nice.
Absolutely love her. So you're working on something now called Insider Art. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Yes,
I would love to. Insider Art, it came about a couple of days after COVID-19. It was like, and again, it's sort of analogous to like what happened with Femme Magnifique. Femme Magnifique was started when the results came in for the election way back when. And everybody in comics was pissed off. And it was aggravating me to see everyone so negative. And I was like, look, let's do something positive. Let's salute women because we missed a chance to have a woman in the White House. Say what you want about her.
Yeah.
It would have been great to have a female. I mean, I think so. So I did Femme Magnifique. I called Brian and Christy Miller, and they knew the ins and outs of Kickstarter. I didn't. So we put it together, the three of us. And I felt the same way, like 5 or 6 weeks ago when everybody had to go into lockdown, and I saw a lot of my friends and colleagues had pencils down. And I thought, well, this is ridiculous. Like, we need to do something and we need to put our heads together. So this time I called Jen King.
Yeah.
I'm sure she is a force of nature. Right?
When we were opening the store, I went to her in New York City and we had lunch or dinner, and she helped me with some of the thoughts working through because she's such a good retailer.
Oh my God, she is. And also just a true blue hero of humanity. She's a kind people person. She gives so much of her time to people from all walks of life. I mean, from kids to adults to people in comics. I know she's a Sunday school teacher. She blows my mind. Yeah. So she was my first phone call because I really wanted to do something for female retailers. It's hard to be female. It has been hard to be female with the current political system, the fact that our civil liberties are like in question, the fact that so many of the things that we worked for all these years for equal rights and equal pay are suddenly just
gone,
squashed. And I knew that a lot of the big shots in comics were going to help their own. And even though I'm not affiliated with one particular company and I'm freelance editing right now, I thought that was even more of a reason to just like step up and say, hey,
think we may have some technical difficulties. So let me see here. I think what we're going to do here, because of technical difficulties, I'm going to go ahead and shut this down and we'll come right back. I'm going to give her another invite. Is that good? Sorry, everyone.